You're listening to the Night Demon Network. Go to nightdemon.net/subscriber to unlock more exclusive content.
Hello and welcome to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. I'm your host, Nesbit. Night Demon started with their first jam in March of 2011 in a warehouse jam space in Ventura, California. Only 6 weeks later, they had an EP with 4 original songs recorded, and they were well on their way to being at the forefront of the new wave of traditional heavy metal movement. This is Birth of the Demon. Saturday, March 5th, 2011, the official date that Night Demon was born. 3 guys with a love of the new wave of British heavy metal, Brent Woodward, Pat Bailey, and Jarvis Leatherby. So they come together in a jam space next to Armand's studio in Ventura, California. So these 3 guys were all busy and active in the music scene at the time. So this new wave of British heavy metal inspired jam, it wasn't really a serious thing. At this point, it was not really even a band. It wasn't even really a side project. Here's Jarvis Leatherby.
So in March of 2011, when we got together for the first time, to say that Night Demon was a side project, I think is actually an overstatement. There was no ambition for us there to do anything with the band except for be a new wave of British heavy metal inspired band for ourselves. Not even for our close friends, really. It was just for us. I've been on record many times saying this before, but, Brent and Pat had a couple friends that were into metal. I mean, I had some metalhead friends too, but for this specific subgenre of metal, the new wave of British heavy metal, and really being in love with it, it was the 3 of us. That's who we knew, and that's why we formed this band. At the time, we all had other things going. Brent was heavily involved with The Fucking Wrath, and that was his main band. I was doing the Jeff Hershey and the Heartbeats thing. At the time that the band formed, Night Demon, I was right in the middle of finishing the first full-length Heartbeats record, and we went on to tour for the next few years on that. So, that was something that I had been working on for a few years really hard, and that's not something that I was going to give up then. But, just having the outlet to do this and having the camaraderie that the 3 of us had as far as just being brought together by this specific style of music, it definitely was a big release for all of us. I think Pat was playing in El Barbero at the time. I'm not sure, or he wasn't in a band at all. So for him, it was cool too to even just be jamming at all. But that was really it. There was no, and I want to make that very clear, there was no intention for us to be a full-time band or even, of course, yes, I guess it is a side project or a side band, but really, I mean, we didn't even have ambition to play a gig at that point. And even from then on, when we started writing songs, we had very low ambition about making records as well. It just wasn't in the cards in our mind. It wasn't something that we really thought would be possible, at least on some kind of viable level where people would actually enjoy this kind of music. You know, there's that factor to it. Plus, again, it's just the other things that we had going on in our lives at the time. This, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, was kind of a way to recapture my youth. It was kind of like having Black Opal back in my life and having that first band back in my life and having the feeling, you know, that nostalgic feeling was really driving me for this style of music. And I felt that at that point in my musical journey, being in 36 previous bands, it was great to have something like that to come back to and just, you know, a Saturday band I can jam with these guys. But we just started creating a tight bond very quickly, and that's what this kind of music does to you, and that's what it did to us.
So remember Jarvis at this time. He's full-time in the Jeff Hershey and the Heartbeats, who are about to release a full-length album. So this was kind of a return to metal to kind of scratch that itch. Jarvis grew up playing metal, living, breathing metal, so this was a great release for him. Here's Armand John Anthony.
I was just like, all right, cool. Jarvis is getting back to his roots, you know, because obviously I always knew of him, you know, being a metal guy when we were growing up, you know, but not this type of metal. It was always more of like kind of newer Metallica-ish kind of stuff, thrashy. So I thought it was really cool.
Even though I had the Heartbeats going for a few years, and at this point, I had just turned 30 years old, you know, less than a month prior to Night Demon happening. And I was really, really trying to finish this Heartbeats record, Soul Music Volume 1, that we did in LA at the Powwow Fun Room, which is an all analog studio. We didn't use any gear past 1970. Couldn't even bring cell phones into this place. It was awesome. This guy, Pete Curry from Low Straitjackets, engineered it. And it was just great to do something fully analog and like a time period piece. And so when I started jamming with Night Demon, it was like, okay, I'm getting the same vibes here, but like the late 70s, early 80s vibe of the stuff that I really do like. So it was cool to have both of those on the go at the same time. And again, Night Demon being such a low pressure situation and the Heartbeats being such a high pressure situation because, I mean, it was based around me only. It was my band, and everybody that ever played with me was hired. And they were hired for the gig, for the recording session, for the tour, for the job. Everything was riding on me. So to kind of have a camaraderie again and feel like I was kind of like in a band felt really good, whether we were serious about it or not. There's just something in the back of my mind that felt comforting about that. I've always been more of a band guy. And the music itself just felt really good. Again, the new wave of British heavy metal style, just even getting together with those guys and playing that Diamond Head cover, Lightning to the Nations, for the first time. I mean, it's great to have a recording of that, and we just kind of hit it right away. And my voice is going all over the place, but whatever. It's a jam room demo. And for three guys that have never played the song before, you can hear it. You can hear that there's something there. I mean, for the first time that three guys even play together at all, let alone play a song for the first time. So I still get a wonderful feeling when I hear that recording. So Lightning to the Nations as the first song, you know, I think that much like Metallica, we had just bonded over Diamond Head. That was one band that we really loved. And, you know, we wanted to play a song that Metallica had not covered yet. So when you're talking about Diamond Head's Lightning to the Nations, which is also known as the White Album, which is the first record that they released, they self-released it. Metallica, you know, through the years had already covered Am I Evil? They did It's Electric. They did Helpless. They did The Prince. There's an old demo tape of them from the garage back in the day doing Sucking My Love. And, you know, so really there wasn't much left to choose from on that record. And so Lightning to the Nations, you know, Brent and I personally always thought that was a really fucking awesome song. So it was a no-brainer for us. I feel like, and I hope I'm not sounding, you know, too overly confident or full of myself or talking out of line when talking about Night Demon, but I feel like that song was left out. I feel like Metallica never covered that song for a reason. I feel like that song was left for Night Demon to cover.
Lightning to the Nations. Yeah. I mean, again, this is one of those things that if it wasn't for them, I probably would have never known that song existed, you know. I knew Diamond Head existed thanks to, you know, good old Metallica, of course, but I never pursued listening to their stuff besides the songs that they did, you know, Am I Evil and all that. So when I heard them do that cover, I was like, oh, this is a cool song. And then I started going back and checking out the catalog.
Cosmically, the universe worked in that way somehow. And that is the song that created the band that changed my entire life and the lives of many other people, I'm proud to say.
So March 5th, 2011, the first time these guys had ever played together. So remember, Jarvis and Brent had just recently met, and they hadn't known each other for very long at all. So instantly, there's this chemistry between these three guys.
Our first jam had a really great vibe. We had kind of already talked about what we wanted to do with it, and I think that's really important. We had a direction. We had a cover song in the Diamond Head Lightning to the Nation song that we know we wanted to do and kind of, you know, base the sound of the band around that first Diamond Head release and the new wave of British heavy metal sound. We all had a really good vibe walking into the place, and I think there was just a little bit of nervous excitement about it. I think that always happens when you play with someone else for the first time, but you know, just us again, going into it, knowing what we were going to do, I think we were all a lot more excited inside than we let each other know.
Hey guys, Nesbitt here. If you'd like to support Night Demon and this podcast, the best way to do it is to become a Night Demon subscriber. Not only will you be doing your part to support a true heavy metal band out there really living it, you'll also gain access to a ton of extras. Bonus audio content, a subscriber-only merch store with rare items from the band's archives. You can stream never-before-heard demos and unearth live concerts from the live vaults. Communicate with the other Night Demon diehards on an exclusive subscriber forum, and gain early access to all press releases, album pre-orders, new merchandise, and a ton more. And another thing that I think is pretty cool is Night Demon will be donating 10% of every subscription fee to the Metal Cares Foundation, which is a charitable fund the band started in 2014 to aid those in our metal community. So head over to nightdemon.net/subscriber and join us as we make heavy metal history together as one. And on a side note, I'll personally think you're a grade A badass.
The jam space atmosphere was pretty interesting. It's nothing like we have now, but it was just a big open warehouse. It's kind of like, think of the Metallica 1 video, but about like a quarter of that size maybe. But, really high ceilings, and there wasn't any dampening in the room, and there was a drum set up on each side. It was the rehearsal room for The Fucking Wrath, and they shared it also with Stop Breathing, which was John Crear's other band that he sang in, a punk band that he sang in. And there was also another band in there called No Say, which shared, all these bands shared members. So it worked out that way. And, Brent being in The Fucking Wrath, he knew that nothing was happening at the jam space there that Saturday. And so he just invited us to come and jam. And Pat brought his drum set, and we set up, and that's how it went. And that's how those jams went. We actually practiced in that room, I would say, for the first for the first 2 years that Night Demon was around. Anytime we got together, that's where we would play. That place is now something else, but it is next to the captain's quarters, Armand's studio, which at the time was called Satellite Studios.
I mean, it was just an empty warehouse pretty much. When they first got in there, it was pretty crazy because they hadn't built anything, in front of the door. It's just a roll-up garage door. So, I mean, when bands were playing over there, it was like you were standing in the room with them. There wasn't any isolation. So that became a bit of a problem right away. It's kind of funny because I had initiated getting those bands over there next door, to have a rehearsal place. And then in a way, I kind of regretted it because of the noise that ended up bleeding into my place, even though it wasn't directly next door to me, but it was close enough to where it still would bleed through my walls. Not to a point where I couldn't work, but enough to where it, kind of affected me a little bit, so it's kind of in a funny way. I kind of screwed myself with that whole situation. But, in hindsight, it all worked out great.
But from all the demo recordings, you can kind of hear, I mean, they weren't professionally recorded at all. They were just recorded on, a stereo mic, I think from my old laptop at the time or something like that. We had a digital recorder as well, but nothing was mic, so you're just hearing the room sounds, and you can really hear how cavernous it sounds in there. But it made the band sound really big, and it made us, as long as we were loud and powerful, that's really what mattered to us. And again, being a kind of, playing a vintage style of music at the time with the heartbeats and being kind of this other high-class showman, it was really nice to get back to metal, back to heavy rock, and just be screaming loud and just crank these British valve amps up and just really pound it away in a room that's just, amplifies you by 10.
So this is the first jam for the band, but they're technically not Night Demon yet. So in Ventura, California at the time, metal was by no means cool. They kind of started out with a name that was not 100% serious.
So when talking about the origins of the band name, originally on that fateful drive to the Viper Room in Hollywood, where Brent and I decided to start this band, he actually already had the name as The Chalice. And it was almost a novelty. I mean, he just kind of thought it was funny. Again, we were living in this different time in Southern California where, I mean, it was almost like sometimes the things you like were guilty pleasures, even though you didn't feel that they were. But when you're constantly surrounded by people that don't understand you, or don't understand your taste in music, or don't understand the scene or the subgenre that you identify with the most, they kind of look at it as this blanket heavy metal thing, this overindulgent, sleazy rock star attitude kind of thing. And that's exactly the opposite of what it is. Either that, or at the time, just very extreme Cookie Monster vocals, brutality, gore, extreme violence, blast beat, just rip your face off, or just mosh pit stuff, right? And, essentially the new wave of British heavy metal is like considered classic rock now. So, a book being judged by its cover, I mean, that's the life that we live, and that's the life that we have lived. So I think, at the time, it was much more easy to be novel about it and go, yeah, we're this mystical old school heavy metal band, and we're called the Chalice, and that's just so ridiculous and over the top, and it will make our punk friends laugh. But once they hear the music, they'll be into it and be like, cool, it's accepted, as long as we're not overly serious about it, right? It's almost like you're embarrassed to, or you're shamed almost in the punk community if you try and do something successful with your art, or maybe you monetize it in some way. That's just how it's always been. There's always been that stigma, But I mean, come on, if you're putting all your effort into it, I mean, what do you do when you go to work, when you go to your job? It's the same thing. You want to be compensated, and you want to be paid, and you deserve to be. Granted, we were a long ways away from this, and but this attitude that was going around, and our being kind of stuck in that cycle. That's why we had no ambition of ever making a dime off of a project like this. I mean, we couldn't even fathom that. So let's make it novel. Let's make it no pressure, not just low pressure, but like no pressure. And let's just do this for ourselves. And if somebody finds out, we can say, "Oh, it's funny." We did a heavy metal band, and we're basically, I mean, we're not poking fun at it, but it's obvious that we're taking it with a grain of salt too, and that kind of like protected us from ever feeling any shame or embarrassment or having to answer to anybody else. If you ask me today, I think that sucks and that's total bullshit. But that's the way that we were insecure about it then, and that's the honest truth.
So, a band named the Chalice, which I think is a pretty cool name, but it does seem a little over the top maybe. They were kind of doing something different that wasn't really considered cool at the time, but I guess that's kind of what makes it unique. Here's Dusty Squires.
Talking to them and finding out about their love of new wave of British heavy metal was pretty interesting, because I had really no background in the new wave of British heavy metal. I knew all the bands that Metallica liked, and I knew that they existed, but I never really had the desire to want to really look into those bands at that time in my, musical, I don't know if you want to call it career. But I thought it was really the perfect time to be doing something like that. It was 2011, and music had come and gone in a different direction. And I think to have like a throwback style sound at that time was something interesting. It wasn't just a typical punk band or a new metal band or, something like that. So it had a different flavor and a different attitude.
So this first rough jam, we've been talking about the Lightning to the Nations cover. that they do by Diamond Head. But Brent Woodward also brings out a riff that will become legendary in the story of Night Demon. So they jam on Brent's riff and come up with an early, rough instrumental version of the song Night Demon. So a cover and an instrumental original tune, pretty productive for a first jam.
The chemistry between us was immediate. And I'm not going to say that in a way of musical chemistry, so to speak. So like compared to all the other musicians I had played with prior to that, there was many other drummers that I hit it off better with than Pat as far as musically, like a bass player playing with a drummer or a guitar player or a singer playing with a drummer. Same goes for Brent. There's a lot of other guitar players that I play with in my life that I had more of a connection with musically. Armand being a great example. Armand and I have done musical projects throughout the years prior to Night Demon, and now we've kind of finished each other's phrases musically, right? But the chemistry between Brent Woodward, Pat Bailey, and myself was in the music that we loved. And so we didn't need a lot of musical chemistry in the instrumentation department because we kind of, we knew the style because we knew what we were going for. We had that target in mind. And I think the looseness of it, of the three of us not having a lot of experience playing together, lended itself to this style of music. Because when you listen to a lot of that new wave of British heavy metal stuff, that's how it is. It's not super tight. There wasn't, the tightness of the thrash scene and stuff like that, the tightness in metal, the quick stops and everything, that, the double kick kind of thing, that hadn't really existed then, at least not in those kinds of ways. So it was way more of a loose, heavy rock kind of feel, and it was the perfect storm. And that's really, it's that chemistry, it's the understanding of the type of music that you're playing that will take you way farther than your dexterity as a guitar player or your knowledge of music theory, what have you. As long as you have a basic roadmap right in front of you and everybody's on the same page, you can have great musical chemistry. And that's what happened with us.
So the first jam goes great. And the next time these guys get together as the Chalice, for what's really their first real official rehearsal, is a little over a week later. So their first rehearsal, March 14th, 2011. They decide this is something they all want to pursue. Their first jam, they played a cover, jammed a riff, had great chemistry. So when they get together this time for the first rehearsal, Jarvis had written lyrics to the song that they had started in the first jam. Come in and finish off their first original song, Night Demon.
We're
So the band then called the Chalice their first original song, actually at that time called Night Demons, plural. And that first song really developed a style that would define the Night Demon sound, at least for the early days of the band.
So on our first jam, we decided, okay, let's try and write a song. Brent had the main riff for Night Demon. So thank God he came in with something, because I really had nothing. And it was a killer riff. And I think he had already kind of had a couple riffs that he had recorded. And I don't know if this was stuff that was supposed to be used for Sumerian acts. Or, you know, I mean, he was inspired just by having a new wave of British heavy metal style band with us. So he'd be sitting at home jamming and trying that. Or maybe, you know, he'd come up with a riff that wasn't quite right for the fucking Wrath. I'm not sure. I know that did happen with some later Night Demon material with a couple riffs here and there. But as far as this first riff goes, the main riff for the song Night Demon, he came in with it, and I was just like, yeah, that is it. That's fucking it. He also had some experience playing drums. He was a drummer for a band called Destructions, and so it was cool. He was able to convey a lot of stuff to Pat, and of course, you know, drums were my first instrument too, and me working with the Heartbeats and having my own band, I also had some experience, at least, you know, kind of writing some basic drum parts. So he had that riff, and we just started playing it over and over again, kind of feeling it out. And then I came up with the verse riff, which is basically a simplified version of the main riff that I could sing over. So you take out the riffy part and just palm mute and kind of, I don't want to say speed pick, but it's like a syncopated rhythm, like kind of the machine gun. And that was something that really wasn't done much in new wave of British heavy metal, if at all. So there you go. You already have something that's kind of a later influence that comes in there, which I think, you know, is the brand of Night Demon. A lot of people say that we sound old school, but there's something fresh about us. And I think it's things like that. So from there, I remember, I believe I wrote the chorus riff for that and just went to just a simple climb, you know, the F, G, A kind of thing. And then kind of back to the main riff. We were crafting the song together. And then I had just kind of decided, hey, let's do these stops in the middle. And then Brent had this kind of other riff, this, and that's when, I mean, the idea came to my mind that would change what I did forever musically and would become the signature of Night Demon, and that is the guitar and bass harmonies. So, when talking about heavy metal music, it's almost a given, you know, all the way back to Thin Lizzy and Iron Maiden, the dual guitar harmonies, Judas Priest. It's just such a staple of heavy metal. It's like when you hear it, it almost belongs to heavy metal. And when you hear guitar harmonies, you kind of you know what kind of stuff you're listening to, right? So we had to have that in this band, and the fact that we didn't have a second guitar player really limited us. And the things that, you know, some of the challenges that a three-piece heavy metal band would have is not being able to do that. So, you know, I've kind of found a way at that point, and I said, well, hang on, what if the guitar plays the lower note and the bass plays the higher note, so that when the guitar is playing the lower note, the gauge of the string is the thickest. And when the bass playing the higher note, the gauge of the bass string is the thinnest. So they almost kind of meet up, where, you know, the thickness of the gauge of the string of the bass and the thickness of the gauge of the string of the guitar are very similar or very close in size, so they create a similar vibration and it sounds more together. If you try and do a low harmony on low note on the bass and a high on the guitar, there's too much of a varying degree of the size of the string, so the vibrations just, it's, it could sound okay, but really the bass kind of overpowers it. So we tried it this way and it just sounded super natural. And the thing is, you run kind of a risk sometimes by doing this, because in traditional heavy metal music, when guitar harmonies are going, you at least have the bass to back it up. So the bass is playing the root notes and they're playing the main riff behind it, where the harmony guitars can go over it. And basically, essentially, a lot of times they can play the same thing over and over. And if the bass is changing underneath it, it keeps the root of the song going. With a 3-piece band with one guitar player and one bass player, you can't do that. So we just had to make sure that we would do this in little tiny fills or in breaks of songs, or, in other songs that we have, you just get the main melody gets drilled in your head already. So when we do go to the harmonies, it's almost like we've tried to play a bit of a trick on the listener where it's implied, because you've already heard it repeat so many times underneath, that when the harmony comes in after, you don't need to hear it again. It's already playing in your head. So, again, to be playing an old style of music and purposely not try and reinvent the wheel whatsoever, not having any pressure is where creativity is bred. And that very moment, like I said, changed. I think it changed heavy metal forever. If I'm being honest, I think with the scene that we're a part of and us being one of the early leaders and the pushers of the new wave of traditional heavy metal scene, I definitely think that, from the very first song this band wrote, by innovating something like that and implementing it into our sound, and still to this day, I think it really proves us as a 3-piece powerhouse that's not lacking anything else. And I'm just really, really proud that we were able to add some originality to this. And it also, again, became a signature of the band and something that we're known for.
It's funny, like when they first started doing it, I didn't, again, I had always heard of those bands, but I just didn't have any real exposure to them. So it was all new to me, and I'm very happy that it has come back around as a style, because it's definitely been good for this band, and it's also been good for another band, and it's also been good for giving us a platform to get out there and play to people that like the stuff and play with like-minded bands and just that whole headspace. I think it's just a perfect blend of the styles that have come before and after.
So from the middle bridge part, we go into this really cool, like Motorheady kind of vibe. I really love that key change, and then the little climb up, the 4-note climb back to the key of A. It was just epic, And then the way we end it with Brent just playing the riff over and over again, and then me going back and forth and climbing down and up on the bass underneath it and doing the harmony vocals over it, and then to end it with that little lead riff that we have where the guitar and bass do it together. We it's not a harmony, and we did not intend to do it as a harmony, but it's just a really cool way to end the song. And really, that was the first song we ever wrote. We had nothing else in our minds. So when you start from scratch, we had basically taken our whole lives of musical experience at that point and put it all into one song and just tried to make it the best we could. And that's why I'm so proud of that song still to this day. And that's why we'll play it at every gig. I mean, it's our namesake, right?
Now, speaking of a namesake song, at the time, remember that the band was not yet named Night Demon. There's still the Chalice at this time. Coming up with this song, they changed their name briefly to Night Demon, and that's Night Demon with a K.
So at our first rehearsal for the band, we wrote the song Night Demon. I ended up taking that song home and writing some lyrics for it. And when I came up with the title Night Demon, it actually had a K at the beginning of it. So a knight, like a royal knight, or like the Knights of the Round. This was like a group of knights. It was the Night Demon. And then so we actually decided to change our name from the Chalice to Night Demon. I thought, hey, that might be a cool name. And then those guys went for it. And so we were Night Demon with a K for a minute. And the song Night Demon, after I wrote the lyrics, we actually dropped the K. So it was night, like how it's spelled now, and demons. So it was an S at the end. So we were Night Demon with a K as a band. And our one song was Night Demons with an N. We didn't know what we were doing, and we were still kind of deciding on what direction to go with this. But again, no pressure. Nobody knows we're a band. Nobody gives a fuck. And these are the things you can do. You can explore. They always say, you've heard of the sophomore slump. And they basically say, you have your whole life to write your first record and basically like a year or two to write the second one. So, we definitely took advantage of this time, and we're just exploring and feeling things out. And, it was just a very inspiring time to be able to come up with music like this and go home, and then you're inspired to immediately write lyrics. With some Night Demon stuff, it takes me a year to write lyrics for. It's just challenging, and there's a lot of pressure. We didn't have that, in the early days, and it was fucking amazing. The musical chemistry at this point really started to gel. Writing this song just gave us a huge boost. And it could almost be said that, like, it was so good for us that there's only one way to go from there, and that's down, right? But it had the opposite effect. I mean, the fact that we put it together so quickly in just initially getting together, it really proved that we could do something here, that we could make music that at least makes us happy and stands up to the great music that we love.
So a name change to Night Demon with a K and a song called Night Demons. You'll also notice that the lyrics of this song are pretty different from other Night Demon songs that would follow, which is kind of cool. The song is such a staple for the band now, and the fact that the lyrics are kind of less serious and less evil, it's like this constant reminder that the band started off as a fun, no-pressure project, like a way for these guys to just express this need to play a genre of music that they really, really loved.
The lyrics for the song Night Demon, yes, they are a bit different from the other songs to come. I think, the song is less about evil and darkness and your traditional cliche heavy metal things, but actually it's not. I think it's actually pretty cliche in itself. And, I think I wrote the lyrics very quickly, and I just wanted it to be something about, like, the Night Demons were like this group, like just a badass band, or not even a band really at that time because we were called the Chalice, but just a badass group of soldiers for metal or soldiers for partying. I mean, really, if you read the lyrics, that's what it is. It's like, we're badass, get out of our way. It wasn't really meant to be about the band. It was just about, a group of awesome fucking dudes.
So after one jam and one real rehearsal, we have a band named the Chalice who writes a song named Night Demons, changes their name to Night Demon with a K. So a song per jam, pretty productive. And I think that just shows the passion these guys had for this type of music and the immediate chemistry they had right from the start. So next week, we're going to pick it up from here with the next jam, the next new song, and another name change for the band. And as always, there are unreleased photos and full demos of all these tracks that you hear on these episodes available in the bonus section on nightdemon.net. Be sure to check that out. And until next time, this is Nesbitt signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. Head over to nightdemon.net, click on the subscriber tab, and sign up to access exclusive weekly bonus content. If you would like to donate to support the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast, you can do so through PayPal at paypal.me/nightdemonmetal. Additionally, if you have not already done so, please subscribe, like, rate, and review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All hail, Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. This is Dusty Squires chiming in to tell you about my brand new signature sticks from the London Drumstick Company. I've dreamt of having my very own drumsticks ever since I was a wee lad, and LDC made that a possibility for me. Founded in 2016 in London, England, the birthplace of heavy metal, the London Drumstick Company has trailblazed a path through the music industry and taken the drummer world by storm. When I met them for the first time, they knew their product was going to withstand the beatings of a Night Demon show. They took the time to work with me on getting everything just right. The balance and weight of my sticks are the same no matter what, and the durability is bar none the best I've ever had. I know my sticks will last through the set night after night. I'm truly honored to work with a company that caters to their players the way LDC does. Their innovation and attention to detail is what separates them from the rest of the stick makers out there. Their custom stick sleeves are unbelievable and really make the entire presentation complete. Wait until you see the design they came up with for me. It blew my mind and was a surprise to say the least. They have all kinds of amazing swag, including hoodies, t-shirts, drummer shorts, drum keys, stick bags, towels, face masks, practice pads, and much, much more. Even if you're not a drummer, you can be a part of Demon history and order my brand new signature sticks direct from their website. How cool is that? And to top it off, the London Drumstick Company are giving an exclusive offer to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. Go to londondrumsticks.co.uk and receive a 15% store-wide discount using promo code DEMONSTICKS. All capital letters, no spaces, Demon Sticks. DEMONSTICKS. I can't thank everyone there enough for the opportunity to be a part of their family and for them trusting me with their amazing products. See you metal maniacs on the road very soon. And yes, the wood chips will be flying.
Greetings, boils and ghouls. This is your comrade, the Crypt Keeper here, reporting dead from the sanctuary of the strange. Tonight's macabre myth is a fright-filled feature, one overflowing with monsters, madness, and magic.
Visit our website at monstersmadnessandmagic.com to stay up to date on all the dark dealings within the sanctuary of the strange. Enjoy the show.
Hey Metalheads, I'm Mark and I host the Metal Forge. Let me tell you about the show. The Metal Forge features the best underground metal from all over the world. We spend every week with a different artist with interviews, in-depth conversations, and most of all, the music. We also feature audience interactivity where you can submit your questions to the upcoming guests. New episodes are out every Friday at noon Eastern Time at metalforgeradio.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking Podcast, a non-genre based, all-ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
Okay, metalheads, you've been complaining that there has not been a channel that plays all of the heavy metal videos from past, present, and future for years and years at this point. Well, that time is over. Heavy Metal Television is back. HeavyMetalTelevision.net is the website. Go there. You can see videos playing 24/7, 365, all the time, all the best from the old school, the new school, and everything in between. Check it out, HeavyMetalTelevision.net. It is where the metal is.